You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome to episode 217 of the Just Japan podcast. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and each and every episode of the podcast, I want to say a week, but it's not quite every week right now, is it? But each and every episode of the podcast, we bring to you someone who is doing cool things in Japan, someone who has a cool Japan story, and this week, you're not going to be disappointed. And the last episode, which did come out a few weeks ago, I had a chance to sit down and chat with Gregorio all the way up in Tokyo, and he talked all about creating his pop-up cookie business, and now it's a brick and mortar shop in Tokyo called Monster Sweets. If you haven't listened already, go back and listen to episode 216. This week, we're chatting with an OG of the Japan video, the vlogosphere, the jvlogosphere, and that would be Kurt Bell, aka Softypapa. A lot of you who listen to the Just Japan podcast, at least those of you who listened to the podcast originally back when I started, back in like 2014, 15, 16, a lot of you came my way. You came to the podcast through my YouTubing, my jvlogging. And I, of course, had my Busan Kevin channel where I would put up several videos a week sharing my experiences, my life in Japan, in Kobe, Japan, and other places, being a parent in Japan, working in Japan, all those things. And again, a lot of people came to this podcast through my YouTube channel. At that time, especially early on, there weren't a lot of people making YouTube content in Japan. And one of the original ones was Kurt Bell. And he was based in Shizuoka, and he made videos that were very different than other YouTubers. His videos were often of him thoughtfully wandering through the deep forests of Shizuoka Prefecture, waxing philosophical, waxing about life, and making some very interesting discoveries along the way. Well, you know what? He's about to head back to Japan for good now. He left Japan 10 years ago. And you're going to hear all about this. This is an epic episode, folks. This is a long episode. The longest, I think, potentially the Just Japan podcast. Maybe not the longest. I think we had a few, we had like a party one at one point, a sayonara party one a few years ago that was longer. But my interview with Kurt was about an hour and a half long. So this episode will be more than 90 minutes. And something else I'm doing, as you can see, if you're watching, maybe if you're listening, you don't know this, but I'm actually recording the entire episode, putting the whole thing up on YouTube. I normally don't do that. Normally video episodes are only on Patreon, but I'm putting this whole episode because it's really special. It's the first time I ever got a chance to chat kind of face-to-face with Kurt. So I'm really excited for this conversation. We'll talk about it more and just listen. It's an awesome chat. So time to chat with Kurt Bell, a.k.a. Softypapa. Okay, folks, it's another episode of the Just Japan podcast, and I'm really excited. I'm very excited. It's been a long time in coming, a long time in the making. For the first time, believe it or not, everybody, on the Just Japan podcast, it's Softypapa, Kurt Bell. Kurt, welcome.
Oh my gosh, I'm giddy this evening. I've been with my wife all day today and telling her all through the day. I'm so nervous about seeing Kevin tonight. Not because you're anyone scary, but because this is like having, thinking you're going to see Bigfoot for 20 years. And
then finally, I am the Sasquatch, and here I am.
There you are. Not as hairy as I expected, but just to go back in the Wayback Machine, back in the day, we would nearly cross paths over and over in the old J-Vlog community, where there would be Tokyo, a Hanami, or a meetup, or an event down in your neck of the woods, and I would or me or with Molly, we would go, we're gonna go do it, and this is gonna be the time I'm finally gonna meet Kevin, because Kevin, I don't want to make you blush, but you were a big thing back in the day, right? You were one of the among those early J-vloggers, there were kind of the elite, and you were one among them. And I got to meet a few of them, and I always wanted to add a Busan Kevin meet to my little autograph book, and then finally it's happening 20 years later.
Those in those days we talked many times, and and I think for lots of different reasons, we weren't able to cross paths. I was able to meet Jim many times, Molly many times. He came down, and when he was one of the big surprises for my going away party. Some really dear friends. When I left Japan back in 2017, he surprised and he showed up in Kobe with Tomoko, and it was really nice. And I did have a chance to meet so many people back in those days, but also, maybe something we'll end up talking about as we progress in the podcast, the reasons why we both left Japan. I know for me, one factor, I left with a financial piece. I never had the money to go to Tokyo. I never had the money to travel to Shizuoka. I just never could afford those big YouTube Hanami parties and stuff.
Granted, you had the most expensive ticket of us all.
Yeah, true. I guess I was farthest away.
Except for maybe Mark down in Kurume.
Yeah, true. And I did get to meet him too. He came up to Kobe at one point for a meetup we had.
See, everybody got to meet Kevin but me.
Well, now we are meeting. Now we are meeting. And
finally, I got you all to myself.
Yeah. No. Yeah, because I tell you, there's one downside of those Hanami parties. It was always cool to meet so many amazing jvloggers, and it was always so amazing to meet a lot of really cool fans, I suppose I'll use that term, followers, listeners. But there was always 1, 2, or 3 followers or fans who were there that were a little bit too intense. That would sometimes make it an awkward experience. You're like, oh.
You know what though? Isn't that part and parcel of the territory of becoming, of arriving in a way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling Yumiko about that the other day because my 10 years in America have been like traveling through, to coin the term from, or to borrow the term from America, a horse with a horse with no name through the desert, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody gives a damn that I'm in America. Everybody won't only give a damn if I was really in Japan. And so my the comments fields in my videos over these last 10 years have been kind of a wasteland and all friendly stuff. And now that I'm starting to ramp up for Japan again, some of the comments that are the types that can make you scratch your head are coming back. And I told Yumiko a couple of days ago, I said, that's the price that you pay once you start to, get there. And you were there at that time, right?
I was there at that time. And I like you, I left Japan, and it's the same thing. When I left Japan, everything kind of dried up. And even though I was in interesting places, I was in China, now I'm in Malaysia. Obviously, the interest level isn't quite the same.
Right.
I had a previous guest on the podcast, a photographer, Noe Alonso, who's this amazing photographer. He's based in Korea, but he makes a lot of trips to Japan, and he's an incredible night photographer, and he's a professional photographer. And he talked about how, he'll put up incredible photos of Korea or other places, like New York City. I think he's from New York, and they do well. But when he puts up photos of Japan, they just explode. Like they always do so well because people just want to see Japan.
There's something about it. And you can just attach, Nippon to anything, and it suddenly becomes interesting in some way, especially now, right? I mean, it's really in a rarefied air these days.
Yeah, no, that's booming. And you see that, I love to follow JJ Walsh's Seek Sustainable Japan podcast. She's been on this podcast. She's a big sustainability advocate consultant based in Hiroshima. And she talks a lot about tourism. And that's kind of she does like consulting with a lot of companies in Japan about sustainable tourism. She brings on a lot of experts about tourism. My parents both worked for Parks Canada their whole career. So I lived in a tourist town. It was always the talk at our kitchen table in the evenings about the stats and the ups and downs. And that would have been in the 80s. So it's I'm always fascinated with tourism, but it's more than booming now, right? And in Japan. And we saw that last summer when we went to Japan for the first time in 3 years. It was insane in parts of Osaka, like the crowds of people. But yeah, so like let's move back here in time. So we for those who are listening, who may not know who you are, let's do a little bit of an introduction. We'll go back in the Wayback Machine, back to those times you were talking about of being jvloggers and content creators in Japan. So I was wondering, in a nutshell, if you could just tell the listeners again, if they're not sure who you are, a little bit about yourself, like how you found yourself in Japan, and I'd like to know a little bit about the Softypapa genesis story.
Sure. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with a lymph phallic. When I first came up with that name, my wife said to me, my wife's name is Yumiko, and she said to me, Kurt, oh, you're gonna get it for that one. I mean, people are just gonna be all over you as
You and your
Softypapa.
Softypapa.
Not once in like 18 years or however many years has anybody, because it predates YouTube. The Softypapa moniker comes from my eBay days.
Yeah.
Not once has anybody said anything. I bring it up more
Well,
than
I
anybody
never,
else.
I'm going to admit, that never crossed my mind until you just said that now. I was like, oh, yeah.
And
Because I just recall you sharing photos many years ago of you being in Japan when you were maybe not as fit and trim as you are now, and pictures with your daughter, and you making comments about like how you've lost weight and you're fitter than you were then, and I remember you making comments like you really were a softy papa,
I
and
was, yeah,
we hear those terms, dad bod. Which
yeah.
I proudly had one of those for a long time. Recently, have just shaken it off with a lot of hard work.
I know you're looking good. I've seen the before and afters. Keep it up, man.
Oh,
So,
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. I want to be spry and ganky when I'm in my 60s and 70s, and I was definitely in the path where I was falling apart in my mid 40s. So definitely, but we can maybe talk about that later. Let's go back to that Softy Papa
sure,
origin
you
story.
betcha. You betcha. So
Yeah.
the origin of the name and the origin of Japan. So my Japan story goes way back to 19. Hold on. I think it was like 83.
Oh, okay.
So, well, I think 83 was the first year I think I came to Japan. I had just picked up the year before in high school, I picked up a summer job teaching English to a group of high school students here in the Los Angeles area. And I spent the summer doing that. And
Okay.
as they do, they invited me over, and they were scattered all over Honshu, the main island of Japan. And so I decided the next summer that I'd take them up on their offer, and grabbed my backpack and flew over to Narita. This is way before internet, way before anything. This is like this dark ages, in
Yeah.
terms of like the early 80s. And
Mm,
I wandered all around Japan for the whole summer, visiting all
wow.
of my students. I was down your way in Osaka, Kobe, everywhere.
Wow.
I was enamored of the place. Of course, as you know, we hear that story over and over again, but I didn't give Japan a lot of thought after that. I moved on to my college career, and then I moved on to university. And I was a bit of, my wife's in the other room. I got to keep my voice. I was a bit of a playboy back then in school. I was dating a lot of women,
Okay.
and not having really any successes. But the thing is, you're in a kind of in it for you're learning how to find relationships, right? You're learning
Yeah.
all about that kind of stuff. Anyway, in my second to last year of university, I met Yumiko, my wife, just kind of in a happenstance way. And she had just arrived. She barely spoke any English. I barely spoke any Japanese, and as I still do not. And so we ended up dating, and I realized really early that this was someone special, mainly because of the fact that she had come to a foreign country against the will of her parents, just because she had this inkling that there was something broader and bigger in the world besides the very small sphere that she grew up in this little
Yeah.
tiny tea farming village in Japan. And you know how insular some of those communities can be.
Mm,
And not bad in any way, but it's definitely a small little fishbowl world. And
yeah.
she
Yeah.
had this
Yeah.
curiosity saying, there must be more. I'm going to find a way. And so even though nobody supported her, she went off and she worked two jobs, saved up the money, came to America, couldn't speak a word of English, wound up in the Northern California. She thought it was going to be like San Diego, and it wasn't. Anyway, I realized this is the woman for me, a woman that can take those kind of chances and go off and explore the world. We've been together, it's just been 37 years this month
Wow.
that we've been, well, more than that, we've been married 37 years, but it's been together longer than that. Anyway, so she then became the catalyst that brought me back. I graduated from school. We went over to, here's a little visuals. So I graduated from university.
Yeah.
We went over to Japan. We spent
Mhm.
2 years in Japan. Then we
Okay.
came back to America. We spent 12 years in America, had a baby, went back to Japan, spent another 10 years raising that baby in Japan, then came back to America. And then we raised that girl for another 10 years through university, which she's graduating next month. And then after she
Congratulations.
graduates next month, we're going back to Japan for the fifth, and I think the final time.
Yeah.
We're going to call it quits. And our daughter's got a job. She's heading off to Tokyo. We're headed back to Shizuoka, and we're going to garden for the rest of our life.
Nice. That sounds beautiful. I'm ready to do that right now, but I've got more years of working in front of me because my kids are still young,
Yeah,
youngish.
I got 10 years on you. So yeah,
Yeah.
you got I know that last 10 years. You'll get there.
No, yeah.
And just
Yeah.
remember,
So
but remember, by the time you're my age, I'll be 70.
yeah. Well, hey. Yeah, no, it's wow, it's a great story, and I love hearing all those kind of the accidental ones are the ones that I like the most. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. For those who become Japanophiles and love Japan and are like enamored with culture, whether it be through movies, manga, all that stuff, toys, you know, whatever it might be, that's fantastic. But you just kind of accidentally met your
But
partner. Mhm.
let me add something to that, and then and enhance on what you just said right there about being the Japanophile. I was not a Japanophile, but I am now. I
Oh
became
no,
one, as did you too, right? Yeah,
yeah.
you and I acquired it. I think acquired it by way of exposure, right?
Yeah. Yes.
More than from a distance, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we have that. Like, so for me, in my case, I mean, I was working in IT, similar to what you were doing. Well, you were doing project management stuff. I think I was a 3D modeler at a game development company, and that was before I was a teacher and before I moved abroad. So I was working in Canada doing that. But I was always so jealous of all my friends who did like who got working holiday visas and went to the UK for the summer to bartend or, um, different things like that. Oh, we are frozen. Hold on a second here. Kurt, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Kurt?
And doesn't let us down.
Oh,
Oh,
there
there
we
you
go.
are.
Oh, yep, we're frozen. Now we're unfrozen. I know what happened there. I sorted that out.
We literally are on other opposite side of the globes, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, what I was saying was, I was doing IT. I had a wanderlust. I never was able to kind of see it to fruition. So I met a guy who was going off to Korea to teach English back in like
Hmm.
2000 and then or 2001. Asked him all about it and got interested in that. Went to Korea, single, footloose, fancy free, didn't know anyone, didn't know anything about Korea. All I knew, everything I learned from Korea, I learned from the TV show MASH.
Yep.
And then I got to Korea and I spent 5 years there teaching. Decided I really liked teaching and I wanted to become a school teacher in Canada. But I met my wife, my Japanese wife, in Korea my final year there, and she was teaching Japanese at a language school. We met, fell in love. I had already been accepted to university in Canada to go to grad school and become a teacher. Yeah, she came with me. Well, she came with me for part of the time on a 6 month tourist visa, and then I said, okay, let's try Japan for a few years. And I got a job at an international school because I was a licensed teacher then. So flew over, and then I was there for 10 years. Like you, and I mean,
Yep.
like you, I fell in love with the place through exposure, and
It's Japan through osmosis.
yeah, through osmosis. And I guess like you, like I realized that for financial reasons, and for career reasons, I had to leave. And we used to have these conversations before you left when you were planning to leave. I remember us messaging other back and forth
Yeah.
because I was kind of in a bit of a dark place
Yeah.
around the same time that you were.
Oh yeah, it was dark.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I mean, I can't speak to you, but I know, like for me, it was hard because
So,
it was a
yeah, and
financial struggle.
I'm an open book on all this stuff. So I don't ever keep I don't really don't
Yeah.
keep secrets. But I totally know what you feel. Japan has always been a love affair with me, but I've always struggled with the myself and my identity, my sense of self, my sense of responsibility as a husband and a father, and I dare say my pride in myself, right? And
Mm.
so Japan didn't challenge me in that way. Japan was like for me, and I haven't really told you the Softypapa story, so maybe I'll back up in a minute and
Yeah.
do that.
Let's do that.
But Japan for me was like a great adventure, but my life was driven in that period of my life from my 20s to the late 40s with the responsibilities, especially after I became a husband and a father. And so even though I would be out well, I don't have the camera. Even though I would be out there in the woods filming like this, there was a little cycle. There's, the cycle in the back of my head was thinking, how am I going to pay for college for my kid? What am I going to be able to do to make sure that she's able to get the right land sale for next year? The whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's this arm wrestling match inside your head. And the part of me that was the responsibility part won out and sent me away from Japan. So go back to America, try to get your house in order, Kurt, and then once you finish with that, then you can come back and you can come play.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's something that all of us go through at that stage of our life to various levels of degree, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's what happened with us. And it moving abroad and moving to China in my case, although not, it was a financially, it was a good move, and it gave me a chance to finally be able to afford to go say home for summer, so I could fly to Canada, and luckily, got to spend the last couple of summers with my father before he passed on. And if I had not made that move, and that's one thing I always say, if I had not made the move to go international, I was already international, but to leave Japan, I never would have had the opportunity to spend a few more summers with my father, and my kids never would have had those summers with their grandpa. And they luckily had a couple of magical summers with him. It was completely worth it.
I totally relate. And my daughter, being able to hear in Southern California, know her extended family here, etc. The same type of thing. Now, I'm going to jump to something. I keep promising I'm going to tell about who Softypapa is, but there's a more pressing and urgent thing, something that I want to talk to you about. I was going to save it for the end, but you brought up the right moment for it. This particular this conversation. I've been meaning to have this talk with you for about 2 years when I first began to think about it, because you left Japan basically the same way I did, as a family man, leading your family abroad to try to find your fortune, right?
Yeah.
Is what we both try to do. Here's the thought that I've had, and I thought Kevin's probably the only person I know of the original JVlog community that can relate to this. Because we left.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'm confident. I haven't gone back yet, but I'm confident, and I'm going back later this year. I'm confident now that I can go back and enjoy Japan anew, almost like hitting the reset button. Because I uploaded a video on the Softypapa channel yesterday called My Last Hike in Japan. And I remember making that video.
I watched that yesterday. I watched that on Twitter.
Thank you. And what you don't know if you saw that video was how burnt out I was. How
you wrote that. You said in that you were basically like a broken person at that point.
I was, but I wasn't just broken for a lot of family related, because I wasn't able to support my family. That's what a lot of the broken heart was. But I was burnt out on Japan. I was burnt out going into the woods. I was burnt out making videos. I was burnt out with antiques because I was an antique dealer for a while. I was basically just finished. I was exhausted and tired, and Japan had lost its love. Like when you have a hobby and you pursue it too hard and you lose all interest?
Yeah.
That's where I was with Japan. But having stepped away for a solid decade, I've got it back. And that's the thing I wanted to talk to you about. I think that I want to ask you, do you feel like when you go back to Japan for good, you're going to be able to go back like a renewed man?
Oh, heck yeah. That's an easy answer.
I knew it.
Oh, that's easy. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I see that even just when I went back last summer. I mean, of course I was on holiday, but I was there for 5 weeks, and it was just, I see it through such a different lens, especially when you've got money in the bank account, you've got money in your pocket that you didn't have before, and you realize I'm here in a very different way. But absolutely. For me, I've got that excitement of
that's what it is. It's an excitement. It's like the Mully asked me about this, and he and I had a conversation. We went to the bench when I was back, and we sat there for a while, and we talked about it. And he used to describe something that he had. He called it the dark passenger. He knows me really well. Jim Mullins knows me really, really well, and he used to describe something to me called the dark passenger, which was this kind of and the dark passenger almost never showed up in my videos, but if you knew me really, you could see it, and he used to comment on it, because Jim doesn't have a dark passenger. Jim. There's nothing. Jim Coyle, there's nothing hidden. What you see is what you got, right? Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing. And he asked me when I came back last year, and I was there for a month, what about the dark passenger, Kurt? And I said, Jim, he's gone. That guy's gone, and he's never coming back. And I can come back to Japan now, and I can enjoy Japan without the dark passenger. I'm confident that man is gone.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like for me, I'm probably going to be working outside of Japan for another maybe 10 years as well, just to and it's a financial thing. I can just make more money outside of Japan. And
That'll
then,
bring you to my age.
yeah, and then or potentially maybe a little bit earlier than that. We'll see. But I mean, I'll be working there. But once I don't have to worry so much about the financial piece, like once and I'm looking at all of these different Instagram accounts. Like I know you love sharing all the IKEA and different cool houses, and
Yeah.
I'm always looking at those, and I'm always thinking about. I know that I'm probably going to be somehow getting into some kind of entrepreneurship. I don't know if I'm going to have a guest house or if I'm going to have some kind of like a B&B or something, but I'll be doing something cool, and I'm looking forward to having just new adventures. And yeah,
Oh,
it's
you totally
exciting.
are. You
Oh, and I
totally
will. I
are.
will. Oh, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool. I mean, the thing
And
that's
you're going to have and you're going to have a lot of new adventures between now and then too.
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Clearly.
I definitely will.
Because you never give it up. And that's another thing. And I'm hesitant to talk about this in a public forum, but I will. Here's another thing that I noticed from our experience of being a part of the JVlog community. And again, it's like you and I have jumped to the catching up part without the front loading the stuff about the JVlog years and all that stuff. But anyway, here's the thing. Having come back to the States and lived abroad again, I realized that, okay, I don't know how to say this without insulting anybody that doesn't see this. The most interesting people leave their countries.
Oh, yeah.
What I mean by that is when we were in Japan and we were part of the JVlog community, it was a rarefied atmosphere of those foreigners from various countries that had basically said, this is all interesting wherever the hell I was growing up. Yeah, I could sit here. There's a bowling alley. There's a theater. I can do a job. But I want to see what's out there in the bigger world. And I've got the courage. I'm going to go do it. Off they go.
Yeah.
And then we wound up all together just as the internet was starting. And every one of those people that formed that JVlog community were fascinating people. And just about every foreigner I ever met that was living in Japan that came from somewhere else was a fascinating person by virtue of the fact that they had the impetus to go. That's no insult to those that never leave. That just simply means that they're a special class, they're a special group. And and I'm sorry for going on and on like this, Kevin. Because I'm sure that you back in the early days, like me, were inundated with people emailing you saying, wow, Kevin, how did you get to Japan? I want to get there too, right?
Yeah.
And maybe out of all of that, of the dozens and dozens and maybe hundreds of people that contacted me to do that, maybe only 2 or 3 ever did.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to that effect is, you are, by virtue of who you are, Kevin, you are going to be interesting wherever you are.
Yeah.
Because you're one of those people.
Yeah. And I mean, like here I am now in Malaysia, and I've been honest with this in recent episodes and some interviews of the podcast. I'm here in a 2-year contract, which most international teachers initially sign a 2-year contract. We already know that we're leaving after the 2 years. We're leaving Malaysia. Right. Where are we going? We're not completely sure yet. We've got some ideas, but it's a matter of financially, it doesn't make sense here to be here longer. And we also don't have the connection because, of course, myself, my spouse, my family, we're not from here.
Right.
But what another layer. So, for example, my kids who are third culture kids, as they get older, the places they've lived, the things they've seen, the things they've done. Wow. The perspectives they have. So different than what I had. But let's pop back to those Softypapa days. And we keep talking about, for those who may be new to it, we keep referring to JVlog, Softypapa. So let's talk about how you got into making vlogs, because I'll tell you, before I came to Japan, when I was living in Busan, Korea, hence that creative name, Busan Kevin, when I was living and teaching in Busan, Korea, with my Japanese girlfriend at the time. And
I remember you left comments.
And I remember I was like, I think I'm going to move to Japan. I'm getting interested in this. And there weren't very many people making videos. And there's 2 that stand out in my mind. There's some others, but the 2 I want to mention are you and Tokyo Kuni, Kevin Kuni. And your videos couldn't have been any more different. And I think that's why I appreciated both.
Totally. Yeah.
He was a professional comedian and NHK personality living in Tokyo, who is a single guy who is funny as heck, showing the kind of the bright lights in the big city of Tokyo, right? And then all of a sudden there's this guy who's wandering through the forests of Shizuoka, finding abandoned villages with a barbell jangling and dangling everywhere he goes. And yeah, both of your videos.
I've got it right here.
I saw you've got a new one, right?
Yeah, let's see. Here it is. Yep. Let's see, I'll make it sound. It's the same sound.
Yeah. So how did you find YouTube, and how did you get started doing that?
You bet. I'm happy to tell this story. And Kevin, I remember the earliest days of YouTube, almost pre-formation of the jvlog community.
Oh yeah,
it was like if this was a galactic nebula. The planets were just starting to come together. The planets being the various content creators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the solar mass being the gravity well, being what became jvlog. It wasn't even formed yet. I remember making early videos on a channel that I call Walking in Japan, under the moniker I called myself Softypapa, because my daughter's nickname was Softy, and I am, of course, her papa, I think. Okay. I hope so. She looks a lot like me. Anyway, I remember making early videos, and there was a guy that would leave comments once in a while, by the name of Busan Kevin. And I would, how you get to know there's regulars, like there's people that come and go, and then there's people names that you remember. Now Busan Kevin's a pretty easy one to remember, and your comments were always nice, gracious, interesting, and greatly appreciated. And then I remember you when you were in Korea before it all came together. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? And thank you, Kevin, for that. I appreciate you're one of my. If this doesn't sound strange, you were one of my earliest supporters.
Cool. Yeah.
Back in the early days, and encouragers. Nice. Yeah. So to get to the point of who the heck Softypapa is, I started the Softypapa as an eBay store, because I went to Japan to live. And I started I wanted to be an antique dealer, so I started an eBay store called Softypapa. It still exists, and I did that for about 5 years until the economy collapsed. Anyway, that was no big thing here then. And I was doing YouTube on the side, starting to make videos, and I had a special kind of a niche where I would every 2 weeks go up into the mountains behind Shizuoka in the Japan Southern Alps and wander around all alone, never on trails, never where any people were, always kind of seeking after, in the spirit of Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, the wilder side, the spirit of wildness, right? To find what was out there beyond the footpath. And I've been doing that since I was a boy. But just so happened I started doing it with a camera and starting to share the videos. And well, lo and behold, people were interested in that. And I started to develop a channel. Now, I didn't mean to become a jvlogger. I didn't even really realize that the jvlog community was forming. And I would say that I missed a great opportunity, because it wasn't until after I left Japan that I really realized that I was part of that community, but I didn't really enjoy that community. I always remained on the periphery. All of you were out there doing your things, and you're communicating and doing collaborations, and I was this guy kind of off in the sideline. Now, granted, I'm 10 years older than most of the jvloggers, except Victor maybe and Mully, and so I was in a stage as a family man of distraction, right? Where a lot of the early jvloggers were still single people. So there's that as well. So anyway, just to kind of wrap this up, I spent my career, as a jvlogger, basically doing my thing on the side of the jvlog community, never really feeling like I was a part of the community, but only in hindsight recognizing that I had the great benefit and fortune of actually being a jvlogger at that time. Let me open the door for my dog to come in.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's interesting, because I mean, you were, to speak to a few of those points, I mean, you were doing something very unique in the creative space. Absolutely. There were not other people doing, like, occasionally I'd make a hiking video, but that wasn't the theme of my channel. Just occasionally I'd go to the mountain and bring a camera with me. Everyone else was always showing, festivals and the bright lights in big city, which is great. There's a place for that and people want to see that. But again, with yours, and I still think why I'm so excited for your return is there's still no one has seemed to fill that void when you left. Like, there are some people who do some outdoorsy stuff from time to time, but there's nothing quite like that, which is really cool.
There's one.
Oh, is there really?
Yeah, there's one. Okay. Although I worry that he's not gonna keep it up.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And you know who he is, but you may not recall his name. It's Gaijin Otosan.
Oh, yeah.
He's got what it takes.
Oh God,
He
doesn't he ever? Right? He's gonna come on this
yeah,
podcast. We've been trying to connect too. He's awesome. I've been following him on Twitter since
yeah.
not super long, maybe but a year or so. But Martin, he's just got something special. He really
Yeah,
does.
he's got what it takes. He could, and whatever he puts his mind to is going to be fantastic and great.
Yeah,
And
he's special.
I feel very, very fortunate. In fact, I got really, really lucky. I was really excited. I was like a schoolgirl squealing this morning to my wife at breakfast. I said, Garjingo Tosan finally followed me on Twitter.
Nice, nice. We were talking last summer about him coming on the Just Japan podcast, and we just never seem to make it. We've got to make it happen. We got to make it happen.
And you know what's most amazing about this? And I was waiting for that too. Okay, because when I left Japan, I was waiting, and even when I was in Japan and we were doing the J-vlog thing, I kept thinking, certainly someone's going to show up that does what I do, right? They're going to go off into the woods and talk and wax philosophical or attempt to wax philosophically and think about those things, sharing kind of thoughts and video all at once, right? In the countryside alone.
Yeah.
No one really ever seemed to do that. I mean, some people did, but no one ever did it on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, I discover Gaijin Otosan, and I think Martin. I think I found him through you.
The Martin Show, yeah.
The Martin Show, and lo and behold, he's doing it in Shizuoka,
Yeah, he's in Shizuoka.
my stomping ground, and he's showing landscapes and mountains that I am intimately familiar with. And this was like before I'm like wow, I'm watching his videos. I'm like, he's showing the clouds and he's talking about them and he's waxing philosophical. And I'm going, go, Martin, go, step off that trail, wander into the woods, go find yourself some philosophy.
Yeah. No, his stuff is great, and he really does have such a neat perspective, and he does wax philosophical, and he does look at the small things and those small things that stand out to him, and he notices and talks about them deeply. And it would be great, if he did get into the woods. But I do know that I've been watching some of his comments recently, and haters have been getting him down quite a bit. So it's been that.
Well, that's just a mark of success.
True, right? True. I think
right. We know that.
That's an interesting thing when we talked about earlier about how since we left, like you mentioned how like your comment section has become a bit of a void or a bit of a desert. And the same thing has happened with me. And I mean, God, man, did I ever have haters? I had haters like you wouldn't believe back in the day. And it was amazing how you could put it the most innocuous, benevolent
that's because
material.
That's because you were probably like one of the top three. And I'm not talking about like 1, 2, 3. I'm talking about a trinity. You were Kevin. You were and you still are. And this is the thing that pisses me off about you. And you never took my advice. Long time ago, you were going to change your. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. This podcast. You remember when you first started this podcast? Yeah. You were scouting around for a name for the podcast, right? Yeah. I'm going to start a new podcast. What should I call it? And I suggested to you, Kevin. You're a guy that moves around. I know. This is not to say that Just Japan is not a great podcast. It's a fantastic podcast, a fantastic platform and vehicle for what you're doing. But my point was this, Kevin, you're going to be zipping around. I mean, we already know that you've been saddled with Busan Kevin, that you've been dragging around Asia now for a while, right? Yeah. Okay, look how that turned out. Okay, but the thing was, and I don't know if you remember me suggesting this to you. I said, Kevin, your attraction isn't where the hell you are. It's you. It's you, Kevin. People are tuning in because they want to hear what you have to say. They're interested in your life. They're interested. There should be something like Martin did, the Martin Show, right? Yeah. It should have been.
Or the Bean Pod, right? Casey Bean, the Bean Pod.
The Bean Pod is perfect, and it's portable.
And that's his name, right? It's literally his name is Bean.
It is, it is.
And he ironically is into gardening. So, like at first, I thought it was because he talked about gardening. That didn't click for a long time. I was listening to many episodes. I'm like, the Bean Pod, because he always does like his garden update.
I didn't realize that his last name was Bean for a while, and I thought it was all about gardening too. And I want to thank you for that as well. He's another one of the persons that I followed.
He's a special one too, right?
Oh, very much so, and Joe as well, of course. Yep. And which I guess we can call him now Ishikawa Summit to See, because he's going solo on that one.
Yeah.
Now that we started to drop names, I'm going to stop because I'm sure I'm going to miss a lot of people.
True.
But this is something else I wanted to share with you I'm very excited about. And before I do that, though, I wanted to hope you got the spirit of what I was trying to say there. It's not that just Japan was a mistake. It's just that, Kevin, you are an interesting person. I hope that you, as you proceed with whatever you do in life, wherever it is, to remember that wherever you are is just a bonus. You're an interesting person, and I can't speak for other people. I tune into your podcast because I want to hear what you're saying and the people you're talking about and hear those conversations. Enough said. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And that's actually something I've struggled with over the years too. About what you're saying, because I'm always like, do people really want to follow what I'm doing, or is it the place? And then it's but
they do. You're interesting, Kevin. You're a fascinating person.
Well, thank you.
And the more honest you are and the more open you are, and I know you always are, but to the best we can. I mean, we struggle as quote unquote public figures, right?
Yeah, and sometimes we have to be careful with how honest we can be when we're working in different settings.
Absolutely,
we always it's got to be you got to be mindful of like who's listening.
Short aside, okay, just a short aside, and then I want to talk about the JVlog 2.0. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Short aside. I work in IT. I work for I work for an organization that has 32,000 employees, and I'm a project manager for it's the county of Riverside, California, and I worry, like you just described, about what I say in public, and I post everything that I post everywhere on LinkedIn too, right? Which is because I'm switching from being an IT professional to being this, right?
Yeah.
And I was in the office this week, and I popped out of the elevator, and who was standing right in front of me? The chief technology officer, right? And he's we're connected on LinkedIn, right? And I've been posting stuff about like you've seen what I've posted about how, my gosh, I can't believe I spent so many years of my life giving myself over to the machine, and I've been a work slave. Anyway, he pulled me aside and he said, Kurt, I've been following what you do, and I really am excited for you, and I gotta let you know I'm maybe just a little bit jealous.
Nice, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to put that aside, that even when we're sharing the hard stuff, as long as it's genuine, I think it can be received.
Oh yeah.
But that said, in a place of school, we do have to watch our step at school.
We definitely do. And I think one of the things that I learned over the years, and I learned this just a few years before I left to Japan, was I decided, and one of the best ways for me to abate trolls was to just own who I am, where I work, what I do, and just to be very honest. And as long as I'm producing content, that's going to be okay with everyone. So, for example, I'm happy to say I'm Kevin O'Shea. I'm a year 3 teacher and social media coordinator at the International School of Penang Uplands in Penang, Malaysia. And that's where I work. I run the social media channels at the school. I create content for the school. I'm a teacher at the school. I run sustainability programs, and I talk about like, this is who I am. This is where I work, and I'm very honest. And then the people, like my head of school loves what I do. The deputy head of school loves what I do. The principals love what I do. So if any nutter comes out of the woodwork and messages them with an angry thing saying, I was watching this video and we don't like what he's doing, and he cheats. I'm hoping that my head of school has watched those videos too, and he probably has, because they, what I mean. So like when you've got nothing to hide and you're being very honest about it, and that can. But at the same time, I also, when I'm on social media, I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about politics.
But Kevin, there's something else as well, and you and me and Molly share this. I don't know if we do it consciously or not, but we don't have to worry about 2 things. We don't have to worry about being disingenuous, because it's not in our nature to be disingenuous. And 2, we don't have to worry about insulting people through profanity or vulgarity or
because we don't use that.
We don't do that. We don't do that. Yeah. And we typically steer. All 3 of us typically steer through clear of controversial subjects. Yeah. It's not that we're afraid of it. It's just that none of us are interested in that shit.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that stuff here.
I can't believe it. See, I just slipped.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? So in a sense, we're safe for that. What we have to worry about as teacher, as I was a teacher before, is of course compromising the safety or privacy of our students, right? Which we trained ourselves never to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those are things you don't see in my social media. Like you don't see.
No.
But okay, so let's go to JVlog 2.0. Let's talk about that.
I want to thank you for this. You're the one that did this, because you're I was never a Twitter person or an X person. I was never a user of X, and I noticed that through you an increased and I started to get interested in it, and I started to use it, and then suddenly I realized Kevin's like this guy, and realized it was kind of an eye opener. Because remember, back in the JVlog days, we were this tight, well, somewhat tight. We were pretty tight. Some of you were really tight, more tighter than me. Community, we did stuff. We were like family in a way, and that kind of just all fizzled away, and it never really came back. But then I suddenly realized Kevin's over there. He's got a new girlfriend.
And her name, and she's a little blue bird.
And her name is Gaijing Twitter.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were the one that, and you even told me some names. Kurt, if you're gonna go, you gotta follow. I'm gonna say a couple of names. You gotta follow like Gaijing Mommy and
Paprika Girl.
Yeah, exactly. You gave me a couple names, and so I went in and started following these people, and I'm going, oh my gosh, Kevin's right. A new generation has come up, right?
Yeah, but they're just not on YouTube.
They're just not on YouTube,
and they're creating amazing content, right? Amazing
and very interesting people.
Yeah,
fascinating people.
I can send you more names. I don't know who you follow, but there's so many. And I mean, that's the one thing, like, so many of us lament in different ways of X when it became X, and when Elon bought it, and he purged staff, and it did definitely in many ways go downhill. So, like, for example, I had one foot in the Gaijin Twitter, but I had another foot in teacher Twitter. As a professional, that was the place to be, but not anymore. Like, teachers left like in droves. And this kind of, once that was a really kind of vibrant teacher creative community with amazing educators showing the stuff they're doing, they all went into LinkedIn. So now LinkedIn is growing and becoming such an incredibly powerful place professionally. So and I mean, you see what I produce, what I put in different spaces. I just put mostly professional stuff on my LinkedIn. That's mostly just like work stuff, teacher stuff, because that's the place for it. And then I keep all of my other things over on Twitter and on Facebook and stuff like that, and Instagram. But that Twitter has that community, and I love that. That's what that
made me realize. That made me realize that it's not a loss. Okay, it's a natural progression and succession. This is not to say that you and me and our generation and the original JVlog community are done. We had our time in the sun. It doesn't mean we can't participate now. But I don't know. I watched the Gaijin Twitter. I think that's what they're kind of called, loosely called.
Yeah, right? Gaijin Twitter. Yeah. That's what everyone. Yeah.
And I feel like from an older generation, kind of watching the fun and enjoying every moment of it, and getting to participate in even a mild manner is a great and personal joy to me. I really love it.
That's awesome. It
makes me realize that it's not dead. It's just transformed.
Yeah. And once you start your journey again in a few months, and you're back there and you're producing Japan content, you have this audience, this cheerleading section, support section. Once you start building the relationships with these incredible people who are on Gaijin Twitter, they're
gonna boot me out.
But
because you don't know what's coming, man. I got a tidal wave, a tsunami coming. So,
well, you know what? I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be really excited to see that and to experience that. And it's the same people who are going to be really excited to see this, because I'll put this on YouTube, this video. I usually don't put a lot of these on YouTube, but I definitely will this one, because I know there's going to be so many people who are going to be so excited to see this. And it's really cool. Like, we had an experience over the summer when we were flying here to Malaysia. We were in Ottawa Airport in Canada. And my daughter especially was so amazed when this young guy walked up to me, and he was like, "Are you Busan Kevin?" Like, literally, like that at the airport. It was this guy in his 20s, and I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, my whole family's there. And he was like, "I've been watching your videos since I was a kid. I love what you do." And my whole family was just like, and he told me about how when him and his buddies were dreaming of moving to Japan one day, they were like in middle school, and they'd sit around and watch my videos on YouTube. And I was just like, that's amazing. I got a selfie with him and stuff. And then that kind of made it real. And it was neat. And then I saw a comment under a video I posted the other day where it was a teacher who lives in Japan. And he said, he's like an international school teacher. He's like, I never thought about going international until you suggested I go international years ago. And he said, and now my wife and I just bought a house in Yokohama.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, Wow. So I was the catalyst for him leaving his own country to go abroad and teach internationally. Now he's like just bought a house, and I'm like, that's incredible. Like the influence that we had over people and will in the
It
future and
it
continue
is.
to have.
It's a very satisfying feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question. So I want to get your perspective because you and I are on a similar trajectory, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? We're
Yeah.
right now we've to keep with that celestial body thing. We're like Halley's comet. We've pushed our way out into the outer orbit, but we're both on a course to come back to the
Yeah. Yeah.
solar mass, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be coming back pretty soon, and then you will be too.
Mhm.
What do you envision? Now you're still some years out, but what do you envision for your return?
What do I envision for my return? Like
Yes.
what am I hoping? Like as a content
Oh,
creator or just like in general?
yeah, yes, as a content creator, as a person among the media.
I think for me, and it would be a very different take. I think for me, what I'm looking for, what I'm what I would ideally like would be me coming back. I'm hoping within, say, the next 5 to 6 years, I'm going to buy a home in Japan, and I won't be living there yet, but I'm going to buy a property, ideally maybe somewhere in Hyogo Prefecture, and I'm going to have that house not a super old fix me up or IKEA, but maybe something that's a bit newer, but nothing new,
Mm.
but something. And I picture myself coming back to Japan on summer holidays and spending my summers repairing, building, taking care of a home. I suspect there's going to be less of me going back to Canada as I kind of have less and less connections
I know you
and
have no connection in your hometown anymore, right?
no, zero. Yeah, nothing at all. And so like, and then my family, my extended family, who are wonderful and lovely, but I didn't grow up with them, and they
They're in
live
a
very.
community that you didn't grow up in.
They
Yeah,
live in
right.
the other part of the country. So when I do
Yeah,
go back to Canada, I'm going to a community that I didn't grow up in. I don't know anyone there.
right.
Um, I know my brother and his family, and my mom, who now lives in a care home.
So what that means is Japan will be home.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I picture myself, doing like hobby gardening, or maybe a bit more than like, maybe farmers markets on the weekend, selling my things. And I picture documenting that and sharing that kind of life. And it's going to be a slower life. Maybe I'm working part time somewhere. Maybe I have to do a bit of a side hustle. Maybe a business of some kind. Maybe I've got like a guest house or something like that, and I'm kind of documenting that life. I think that's what I'd be doing. Very different,
That's
but that's kind of my dream.
I guess then I have to phrase it somewhat differently because
Okay.
maybe it's because of my proximity to the moment, right? I
Yeah.
mean, up until like the last 6 months, what you just described was exactly what I had in mind, right?
Okay.
And I guess it's also kind of like you can think a roller coaster looks the biggest scariest roller coaster in the amusement park looks like fun until you get to the right to the roller coaster you're about to get on, right?
Yeah.
So I want to confess to you, I'm 8 months out
Mm.
from departure,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I have never been more afraid of going to Japan than I am now.
Oh, really? Okay. Hmm.
And that's what and so I was hoping to get your thoughts, but I think you're too far away
I think
to
I'm
to
too
know
far
this
out.
fear
It's
yet.
it's not because I know that like I realize that I'm professionally going to be making another move to another country to a new job before that
Right,
happens. So
right.
I'm gonna have other big life transitions before I have that Japan transition.
Because here's
So
the thing. I mean, and it's only been like in the last 6 months. Okay, before that, I decided to retire a year ago,
okay.
and I gave notice at work, which was the best thing I ever did because they basically said, "Oh, you're leaving in a year? Okay, we're not going to give you anything else to do." Kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
And so anyway, here's the thing. For the first 6 months of that, it was all, wow, the end is coming. Wow, I'm going to be free. What am I going to do? And then it transitioned 6 months ago to, oh my gosh, what the hell am I going to do? Right? What am I going to, this fear of not having the benefit of the distraction of raising a family and a demanding job that requires everything and all the worries that come and are incumbent upon that. The fear of not having that anymore and to be left to my own devices. And I think I'm starting to worry that I'm not up to that challenge.
Mm. Okay. Interesting.
which sounds like a very first real problem for sure, but it's real.
Oh yeah, that's not a first world problem. That's a very real problem for, yeah. Again, I think I don't have a perspective on that at this point because I'm too far out. And because I still know that like, you know, when I have hard days at work and I'm feeling burned out, as many primary school teachers do, and each year is really different and challenges are different every year where you face with the kids who are in your room, right? And I have hard years and years that aren't so hard. Last year, I had a pretty good year professionally. This year, it's pretty good too. But next year, it could be completely different depending on the crop of kids I get. And it really is like that when you're a primary school teacher. So for me, it's often a year to year thing. But for me, again, I guess I know that I've got so much more of a working life ahead of me before the R word,
Right.
the retirement word.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm going to be in a financial position, to be honest, even in my 60s to fully retire. I'm going to be working, I think, to some capacity. Whether it's in an entrepreneurial way, running a business, or even like working, part time doing something, I'm gonna have to. And part of me wants to as well. I want to kind of just be active, and I think
Yeah.
if I'm running some kind of a business now, if you're obviously we both know that if you're a content creator and a very dedicated content creator, that's a job too. I mean, hopefully you can reap financial rewards from it that are worthwhile, but it's a lot of work when you want to create good content for people. And
I know, but is it sustainable full time, right? Or even part time? I mean, uh, I'm
like I make
and
zero money now doing anything. Like I make nothing. So there was a point in time, like in the JVlog days, when, um, there were some boom months and years where there was a few years where I was making, I want to say 500-600 bucks a month. There was a few videos I put out that went viral. I always like to tell the kids about how I had one video in one weekend. I bought a new MacBook Pro because of a video. That's like a one video I made in Kobe about construction workers. I filmed, went viral, and I made like Sanju Man Yen in 2 days.
mm,
It was just, and I literally like that next month when I got that pay in my Google AdSense went in my account. I went and I bought a MacBook Pro, my first MacBook. It was just, but then it was, and now I think like last month I made like $2.45.
yeah,
You
yes,
know,
that's I guess that's the rise of Patreon and all those
well,
other things.
that's what modern content creators have to do all that in order to, if they have to build, they build an audience, and then with an audience, if they have a supportive audience that's large enough, I suppose. I've tried Patreon. I think I've been trying to, but it's not working. So,
Can I
no one,
share? Can I?
no one's coming over to join the party.
Yeah, yeah. Well, wait till you get back to Japan, maybe.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So it's interesting. I've given that a try because, but that's actually, I think for me it's a shift, and I think one thing I've just was thinking to myself recently is I'm going to stop talking about stuff during my podcast, like about come and support me here, come and go. Like I think that's flogging a horse that shouldn't be flogged at this point. And I'm just going to make content and enjoy making content and not think about any kind of financial thing because I'm not in a position. I think where I'm at, the interest maybe isn't as strong. I don't know.
I'm not, I don't know how to navigate those waters either. So I largely avoid all of that as well,
Yeah.
largely because I just don't know how to do it.
I think I'm
And
just going to get out of the water. Like that water.
okay,
I mean, I'm going to create content, but I think like the whole like Patreon and this and that, trying to monetize it, I'm just going to just put that on the back burner for now because I think I should just focus on the content.
can I share with you something else?
Sure.
So this is an interesting opportunity talking to you like this. I don't ever have any chances really to talk to anybody anymore from the old days. Molly and I talk practically every day on his Discord, but it's we don't have the same talks that he and I used to have. But I want to talk to you about something else. This one's a little trickier, a little harder for me to talk about, as if running into an existential crisis returning back to Japan wasn't hard enough.
Mm.
There's something else going on, and that is I'm 50, I'm going to be 60 next month, and beginning at about 58, my body has begun to, and I talked a little bit to you about this
Yeah,
before.
we kind of messaged each other about this.
Yeah, and I know Mully gets it. He doesn't like it when I talk about this stuff,
Okay.
but I see death coming for me,
Okay.
and and it looks, how do you say this? It's driving me forward to act
Okay.
because I see it coming. And I don't know what I'm trying to get in sharing this with you, but this is going to come through, and whatever I do in Japan, whatever my videos are going to be in part not only a chronicle of my experiences in Japan, but also a chronicle of, wow, this mortal coil appears to be a little less mortal today than it was
Well,
yesterday.
it's interesting enough. I listened to a podcast, a comedy podcast called Tell 'em Steve Dave. And I've been listening to this podcast. They've been doing it since like 2008. When my first year in Japan, I was listening to these guys, and it's three guys based in the United States, and they kind of got a big bump initially in their podcast when they first started because they were friends with Kevin Smith, the movie producer and director. They grew up with him. They were childhood friends. So two of the guys went to high school with Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith, when he became famous, he opened up a comic book shop. And one of these guys was the manager of the shop. And so there were three guys. Then there's Brian Johnson, and then Brian
Not the
Quinn.
Beach Boy.
No,
Beach
different. No, not that Brian Johnson. I don't. And there was a guy named Brian Quinn, who is now of Impractical Jokers fame, the famed American comedy TV show. And oh my God, I can't believe I'm brain farting on another name. But so the three of them were doing this podcast. And when they first began, it was 2008 or so. And they, one of the guys, Brian Quinn, was a firefighter with the New York City Fire Department. And the one of them managed a comic book shop and the other was just unemployed. And then what happened was, Walt Flanagan. And what happened was over the years, they've been doing this podcast consistently for years. Kevin Smith was able to get a TV show, a reality TV show filmed at his comic book shop called The Comic Book Men. And two of them were in that show for 6 years. And then Brian Quinn, who was a New York City firefighter, had a group of friends, childhood friends, who had a comedy troupe called The Tenderloins. They ended up getting the show Impractical Jokers. And they all became famous. And Brian Quinn is still super famous with Impractical Jokers. And he's got millions of followers. And it's like, but it was interesting. I've watched this progression of them from they were just like a bunch of guys who had a podcast and they all kind of got famous. And then that TV show got canceled, The Comic Book Men. But one of the things now is like two of them are like 55 or 56 years old. And Brian Quinn's my age. He's like 48. And they now a constant topic that comes up in their podcast episodes is this thinking about death. And I realize I'm not young anymore and I creak and I hurt and this happens. Yep. And do you guys think about like when the number comes and they say, well, yeah, we've got less ahead of us than we did behind us now. And this is like a constant thing these three men are always talking about. Is about how as they look in the future and they realize that the future is not going to be as long as the past. And like they'll be like, one guy's like, I stay awake in bed at night thinking about this. The other guy's like, yeah, I don't do that, but I do think about it a lot. And I got to admit, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my late 40s, and I think about it sometimes now too.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to weave this into whatever I'm going to become in Japan. I call it this Softypapa 2.0. Because I think maybe you remember I had a couple of different brands. I had the Walking in Japan brand, the Aban in Japan brand, and I had this really weird brand called Lyle's Brother. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, I remember them all. Yeah.
Lyle's Brother was the videos that I did when I had a thought. I'd throw the camera up and talk at the camera while I'm walking to work about pontificating about whatever the heck. And I'm thinking now but I rarely talked about death. It was more to talk about the various other things. But I want to weave this in. This is really fascinating. And the anecdote that you just provided helps to bolster the fact that this is something that's becoming front of mind for people that are reaching their late 50s.
I don't think it's a unique thing to you at all. I think I'm just in my late 40s and I think about it sometimes.
But why is it that nobody wants to hear me talk about this? Every time I try to talk about this with anybody, the reaction is always the same. It's like, oh no, you're plenty healthy. You got lots of years ahead of you.
I don't think anyone wants. I think people don't want to. I think people don't want to you know,
Here's what I want to do. I want to talk with someone and say, "Hey, listen. Oh, okay. So you feel it too? Well, so if
yeah.
we're lucky, we got maybe another 5, 7, 10 summers left, good summers left in us. How are we going to capitalize that? How are we going to utilize those? This is Kevin. What prompted me to retire at 60 was because I was like, holy crap, I'm not going to trade time for money. I don't want to wait until I'm 67 so that I can be decrepit with a big bank account, right? I'd rather go out at 60, struggle a little bit for a while, but at least still have my vitality. And it's because I'm thinking these thoughts and I think they're
Yeah.
very useful thoughts.
Yeah.
But I'm just sharing with you, I want to season this new Softypapa 2.0 with mortality.
Yeah. Well, hey, go for it. I mean, it's, it's, I think it's something that is front and center for a lot of people. And I think there's people who don't, denial ain't just a river in Egypt, right? And there's people who don't want to think about it. Think about that typical thing when I talk to women coworker over the years, female coworkers of mine who often, I had a team of awesome ladies I worked with a couple of years ago. I was the only male on the teaching team. We had like 7 classes in kindergarten, and I was the only male kindergarten teacher on the team. And they talk about this. And that very year, I had a lot of health problems. So, I had a crisis. What do they call it? Crisis level hypertension. So I basically have stage 3 hypertension. If I don't take medication, like my heart, like my blood pressure is so insanely high, but it's a genetic thing. So I've got really high blood pressure. I was overweight, had some potential liver stuff that was going on because I drank too much. And all these things kind of came together all at once. And then it was a kind of a health crisis for me. And one thing I learned from that is now when my body tells me something, I go to a doctor. Like when I'm worried about something, I don't sit on it. And that's one of the things that a couple of my colleagues were saying, that like so many of their husbands, they get a health problem, but they don't do anything about it. They don't go to a doctor. They don't get it checked. They just sit on it, hoping it's going to go away, hoping it's going to go away. I don't know if it's always a man thing or not, but maybe it's not. That's just a stereotype. But there's a lot of people, I think, a lot of people in the world, when something's wrong, they just kind of hope it will go away on its own. I think when I was in my 20s, I used to be like that with utility bills. They'll go away on their own. I don't have to pay those, do I? But maybe people just don't want to talk about it because it brings things front and center to their mind. They don't want to hear it.
Yeah, a lot of people are afraid of death and
exactly.
and mortality. Yeah. So the approach that I'm going to take, and then what I would like to do then is share with you what's coming, because I want to give you a preview of what Softypapa 2.0 is looking like. But before I finish this death thing, I want to tell you what my approach will be. So the approach will be not health and fitness and wellness, although those things are certainly important. It will be something that you may have heard me say in the past about being always ready to die, right? Mm-hmm. Having life in a state of readiness.
You talk about that often in your videos and your different posts and things. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Because it was something we haven't talked about at all, was the fact that I wasn't not doing anything this last 10 years. I've spent the last 10 years very busy in the United States with a completely different project. Yeah. Called, the writing of Going Alone.
Oh yeah. You've been incredibly active over these years. Absolutely.
The development of the Good Life Creed. And I've written 5 books.
You never slowed down. Yeah. You ramped it up, if anything.
This is the fecundity, if that's the right word, has been phenomenal since coming back to America. As the man once said, America has been very, very good to me, right? Mm-hmm. But that has, what's happening in that is in writing Going Alone and in developing the Good Life Creed and taking on this methodology for life, a very stoic outlook on life. I'm bringing that back to me with Japan, whereas before this Lyle's brother guy was basically a pontificator without a clear philosophy. I didn't have a creed. Now I've got a creed. Now I've got a purpose. Now I've got a story to tell in bringing that back to Japan. So let me give you a preview. You didn't ask, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. of what Softypapa 2.0 is going to look like. So get ready, all of you out there, if you see this. If you're following me anywhere on any social platforms, get your unsubscribe buttons ready. Because Kevin, do you remember when one of my other brands was the YouTube bullet train?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember what that was all about?
That was like super short videos, right? That was
Super short videos. The slogan for that channel was
shorts before there were shorts, actually.
they were.
Yeah.
And my slogan was Japan at the speed of life.
Yeah.
And I was basically whatever I saw that I was interested in, there's something over there, there's something over there. And I would upload like 50 short videos a
Yes.
day to that channel.
Remember that.
And do you remember that was the day when you had to earn your partnerships with
Yeah.
YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I started that channel a 1 week in. I woke up one morning and got an email, a personal email from YouTube saying, "We love what you're doing. We've monetized your channel."
Nice.
I didn't even have to apply to the partnership thing. So since then I forgot the password. I don't even have access to that account anymore.
Oh, that happened with me. The side note that happened with me with my Jland Kev channel.
I
had another.
know.
I
Man,
lost. I no longer have access to that YouTube channel. It's still there. I watch videos on it sometimes. I'm like,
that's how you became mad for Maple.
yes, yeah.
I know. Every time I see Mad for Maple on X, I'm like, I know how you became mad
Because I lost access.
I know it must gnaw at your gut.
Well,
just
because
like
yeah,
gnaws at my gut that I can't access one of my most popular channels.
yep,
Anyway, so that concept, I'm bringing that back. So here's the thing. Here's the setting for Softypapa 2.0. I've got 8 more months of work left in me. Although I'm tempted to work a few more months. Something's going on at work. There's some incentive that's come my way to maybe stay into the first part of 2025. Although Yumiko's telling me, don't go, you're coming over. Okay, she even threatened to come back in December and drag me back. So, because my wife is going next month. She's retiring at the end of this month. She's got 13 work days left. She's retiring at the end of this month, and then she's hopping on a plane with my daughter. So I'll give everybody a synopsis because they don't know all this stuff. Is that all right?
yeah, sure.
Okay, so my wife's done at the end of this month. Our daughter Emily is graduating on May 21st. Both Yumiko and Emily, my wife and daughter, are getting on an airplane on the 22nd. When they get to Japan, Emily's going to be met by her friends in Tokyo. My wife's sister is going to meet her in Tokyo, and they're going to go back to start their own lives. My wife's job is to find us. She's going to buy a car and then find us a house. We've got a short list, and she's got it all set up and go buy us a house. Well, that's all happening. I'm going to remain here because I've got 2 little dogs that I've got to ship to Japan, and they've got some time left, and I can't get them until the December. So I'm going to stay here now. But once I get to Japan, like I said, get your unsubscribe buttons ready, because when I arrive, I haven't told my wife yet, but just before I leave, I'm going to get myself a new iPhone 16 Pro, the big one, and I'm going to get myself one of those Mophie things, the chargers, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to arrive in Japan. So the battery never dies, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to arrive in Japan. I'm going to walk off that plane, Kevin. YouTube bullet train is back.
Nice. Okay.
So, but that's not going to be happening on my YouTube channel. That's going to be happening on my social media feeds. My YouTube channel is going to be of far more curated things. There's going to be 3, maybe 4 brands that I'm going to bring back. I'm going to bring back the Walking in Japan brand, which is me out in the wilderness alone exploring. I'm going to bring back the Real Japan Monsters brand, which is insects and animals.
I love that.
And I've still got the good camera for it. And I'm going to bring back, wait for it, the Abandoned Japan brand. That's coming back in force, right?
Yeah.
Now, although the Abandoned Japan is going to be a little bit different, you may remember that I disappointed a lot of people when I did Abandoned Japan because I almost never went into any buildings. Maybe I would poke my camera through the window.
Yes.
Now I'm going to be even more respectful and circumspect. I'm not going into any buildings. So those of you that are going to watch the Abandoned Japan in the future, it's going to be an old man's version. Oh, there's an interesting Nokia building from a distance. I think this is just about where the property line is. That's as far as I'm going to go. Okay? Because I have mellowed, and I want to respect the privacy, because just as well as I do that in Japan, it's not about the laws, it's about the etiquette and the propriety of it all, right?
Absolutely.
And then the fourth part brand will be Lyle's brother with a tinge and tint of going alone. Now, here's the last thing. I know I've talked a lot, but I'm just about to wrap up. This is the part that's, Kevin, this is, okay, you will understand. This is the part where I feel like a friggin' kid before Christmas.
Okay.
I'm not going to have anything that I have to do. I can just friggin' get up every in the morning and do this every day. My kid is grown. My career is done. I can just wake up I'm going to be living in a farm somewhere in the mountains. I can just get up and do whatever the hell I want. Can can you just sit with that? I can't believe that that's actually coming. I kind of keep expecting a heart attack to happen to deprive me of this opportunity because it seems too good to be true.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So that in a nutshell, that's what's coming with Softypapa 2.0.
that's fantastic. There's gonna be so much awesome content coming. Yeah, that's exciting. That is exciting. That's really cool.
Oh, one last piece. One last piece. Get this. My wife wants to get in on the picture.
Oh, nice.
She wants to be a part of this and make videos together as well.
Oh,
So,
fantastic. That's so cool, man. That is so cool. I'm being mindful of time right now just because I have to get going soon to the supermarket. Because what time is it now there? It's like 8:30, 8:40 your time, PM?
8:41.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
and that's so cool, man. That's so many cool things coming your way. That's really exciting. And for those of you who are listening who know who Kurt is, I know you're excited too, because that's one of the things that I've gotten so many people over the years, like so many comments people have lamented about you leaving and talk about how much they miss like your videos. And I have to admit, and I even see like sometimes I've seen comments that people leave on your stuff, and like people remember your videos very well. Like when you post something, there'll be people who are like, I remember that video. Oh, I remember watching that video. So I mean, again, you always had such a unique way of doing things, and I think it's interesting. One thing that popped into my mind now, just as you mentioned, like Abandon Japan and being respectful, as we both do know, it is all about the etiquette in Japan, and it's about self-policing and realizing that we are
And
ambassadors,
doing things right.
doing things right, because we are ambassadors when we are
We
there.
are guests.
We are gaijin
Yeah.
ambassadors, and we are,
Yeah.
foreigners are painted all with the same brush. And when you hear all these, like, there was a lot of horrible news coming out in the last recent months of these like live streamers who were coming from America and different countries,
Yeah.
European
Oh
countries,
my gosh.
going to Japan,
It's
and
just
to be in the biggest
horrible.
jerks and live streaming it all. And there was one guy named Johnny Somali, his
Yep.
username, who was he was in jail for
Nuisance
months and
streamer.
months. Yeah, that's right. And he was thrown in jail for months and months and months in Osaka for doing lots of stuff. And I think, ironically enough, one of the moments that those content creators in Japan who are like above the board and awesome content creators were really happy about was where I think it was some Australian guy like punched him out in like Shibuya or no, somewhere in Osaka. He was like being a nuisance, and like literally some guy knocked him out. It was like, yay! I don't condone violence, but. Again, like I see a lot of the kind of abandoned thing has become like Haikyuu or the urban exploration. It's a big deal. Like it's there's a big genre of that, of content creators, and a lot of people come to Japan. They travel to Japan to tour sites, and they do barge into buildings and climb over fences and do all these things. And again, you want to be really respectful. So I completely get what you're saying about But I think what's going to be really interesting though too is you will have a perspective of knowing enough about the locations where you're at that you can add context to things. I think that's one of the things I enjoy watching with your videos, where you would talk about like the unkept tea fields, and you would talk about the different types of constructions or the old Jizo statues, or you knew enough about you could place a context around it. Whereas, and you'll see these guys who come over from America like, yeah, look at this old place, man. Look at this cool statue, eh? Oh, let's go in here and check this out. Oh, I wonder what's going on here. And it's just like, I try watching some of those. I'm like, I can't handle this.
The best part is just being old. I really, even though my body is starting to give out, I love being almost 60. It's so you've probably heard me say this before. Every decade is better than the one before, right? The 20s were awful. The 30s were a riot. The riotous mess. The 40s were a strong trudge uphill. The 50s were a desperate attempt at completion, and now the 60s are like making it through the jungle out the other side into the sunlight again. And I'm hoping to bring all that you just said with the sense of relief and peace that comes of being into my sixth decade without hopefully being irrelevant.
I don't think you'll be irrelevant. I think you're going to be you're going to make a splash. And I think
Well, they can always hit the unsubscribe button, right?
I think people are going to be really happy to have that content, because even like I find now, it's just even so much content is so fluffy these days, and I mean, there's some great content creators out there. There's people who are doing amazing things. I'll always mention on this podcast, like I'm a big fan of Chris Broad, abroad in Japan. He's a big commercially successful YouTuber, but his stuff is so funny and it's well done. Like it's just like
so well done.
And he's got such a love affair with Tohoku. And he's got such a love affair with northern Japan, and he knows because he came there as a jet, and he knows that like they say 95% or 99% of tourists who come to Japan don't go to Tohoku. So like he just constantly featuring Akita and Niigata and Iwate and Aomori, and it's really neat showing him making all this like really relevant, neat content about those places. But a lot of stuff, and I was saying this just the other day to some folks I work with, like here I am in Penang, Malaysia, and when I go to try to find, like, do a little bit of research on YouTube to find out stuff about Penang, Malaysia, travel vloggers from all around the world come here because it's a foodie paradise, and they all make the same bloody video. Top 10 things to do in Penang, and it's like, cue the drone shot, cue the music, cue this, fast cut, fast cut, fast cut, cue another drone shot. And then every YouTuber goes to the same 10 places. So I think their research is to watch Joe Blow's video and just make the same video. And then it's just like, it's hard to find kind of the deeper, more meaningful content.
But you bring that with every video you make,
Well, I mean, I guess I will try to do that, but I mean, I want to see people doing that. I want to consume that content. I used to say this about the Just Japan podcast. When I first created this podcast, I wanted to make a podcast that I wanted to listen to. I liked long form. Because I had big train commutes, and I wanted to put my earbuds in and be able to just turn on my iPod and just kind of melt into something for a couple of hours. And initially, there weren't many podcasts, and this podcast did really well, and it was booming, and I had a big following. But then I took a long hiatus when I went to China, and then I brought it back. And there's still a good following. Don't get me wrong. And thank you, all of you, for listening. I appreciate it. But it's definitely not like it used to be. But now in the landscape, there's a lot of podcasts about Japan. And it's cool because podcasting has become a much more accessible thing. But you know
what? They're not you, and they're good too, right? In their various ways, in their own personalities, etc. But your podcasts have been a great success. All the various types are very professionally produced, very interesting, great guests. I always look forward to seeing a new one of your podcasts appear in my feed. Sometimes it's a real delight because I get a twofer. I'll get two of them in a row. So I'm glad you're keeping that up. Will you keep that up when you go back to Japan, or will you become a YouTuber again?
I'll both. I want the podcast. It's apples and oranges. It really is. It is content, but it's so different. No, I want to get into YouTubing more. Actually, we'll see how this goes. I've got to do a lot of editing this week. I decided, I don't know if you saw, I posted a video about this. It's part of the sustainability thing. When you look at being more sustainable as a human, it's not just about like recycling. It's not just about going to the beach and cleaning things up. Like that's a piece of it. But one piece is supporting local businesses. Instead of going to the Family Mart to buy products, go to the local mom and pop shop.
Go to local family.
Yeah. So what
family mart.
Yeah. So what I decided to do, there was a really neat little grocery store in this neighborhood that we go into a lot, and we often talk to the owner, my wife and I, and it's just a neat place. He's been there in this location for over 50 years, and he's got these pictures in the back of the shop of when his grandpa owned it, and it was a stall, and then his dad, and this and that. So I came in the other day, I'm like, I would like to make a little mini documentary about you. Can I do this? And I kind of pitched to him, I want to come in and ask you a bunch of questions and film a bunch of B-roll. And I want to make like a 10-minute video about your to kind of celebrate.
I saw your post on it. I'm looking forward to it. So did you do it already? You haven't posted it.
No. I've recorded everything. I've recorded all the B-roll. I went in, I interviewed the owner, talked to him, he showed me all around the shop, showed me pictures, talked all about the history, how this neighborhood has changed over the years. It was so fascinating. So fascinating. He talked about in the 80s when there was like the Japanese economy was booming. They used to get so many Japanese tourists here that the locals in Penang would learn how to speak Japanese to be tour guides. And then when the bubble burst, all the Japanese tourists went away, and then different things happened, and it was really cool. So I'm going to start editing that this week, and I'll be putting that up on YouTube. And I want to start making more of the content I've always made, that kind of like just kind of shoot and talk. But I also want to make work on my editing chops and make kind of a little bit more deeper stuff.
Those are always my favorites. And you just made a couple of them this week. You're
Yeah,
walking around the neighborhood with the dogs, but you used to make the walk and talks in Kobe.
that was always my
And
thing.
though Kevin, those I don't know. I don't want to say that your edited videos were not as good, but those were the best. Those were the ones that were like, oh, great, it's Kevin walking and talking, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I keep coming back to this theme. It really is the Kevin show, right? Just we're interested in you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and you're an interesting guy.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Please don't forget that.
You're a
I've been
really
telling you
interesting
that
guy too,
I've been
Kurt.
telling you that for 15 years, damn
Yeah,
it.
true, right? Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been awesome, but I got to get going. My MacBook is at 18%, and for
All
some
right.
reason, and my
Can
charging cable isn't charging right now.
can I go out with a closer?
Absolutely, sir.
All right. First of all, I want to thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity to be on this podcast and to reintroduce myself to your audience and to those of you that know who this name is, Kurt Bell or Softypapa or any of my other aliases. From the past. Thank you very much for your past support and patronage and encouragement and comments, etc. I've been away for about 10 odd years doing other things, and I'm looking forward to going back to Japan. For those of you that are new that don't know who I am, and some of the people in this Gaijin Twitter community and people that just simply never heard of me in the first place, and Kevin's your first time introducing it. Thank you very much for making it this far through the video. And if you happen to catch any of my videos in the future, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have a chance to share a slice of Japan from the perspective that I'll be bringing in the time that I have remaining on this earth. So thank you. And Kevin, one of these days, we're going to meet in person and share a beer together. We've got that coming.
Absolutely. And luckily these days I can get the Asahi 0.0 everywhere because that's what I drink these days. But they have those at all the convenience. And we definitely will. Absolutely. And you know what? I think even if summer of 2025 might be a good time for me to take a train or drive a car up to Shizuoka and we can meet up, because that'll be a transition year for me as we move on to our next port of call. And then we'll probably be spending most of that summer in Japan. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Kurt. It's been amazing. Everyone go. I'm going to put a whole bunch of links to Kurt's Twitter, his YouTube, all just search for Softypapa and you'll know what I'm talking about.
Not the porn star. Wait, no, that would be Hardy Papa. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tippy Papa.
So look for the guy, the Softypapa who explores Japan. But yeah, no, it's been absolutely amazing, Kurt. And one thing for you guys listening, one thing I'm going to do with this episode that I don't often do is, of course, it's in the audio feed. You're listening to it wherever you listen to your podcast. But this will also, the whole thing will be on YouTube. When the audio version drops, the video version will drop on YouTube as well. Go check it out. It's going to be like an hour and a half video, but you guys will enjoy it, and it's going to be cool.
Kevin, you are a gracious host, a gentleman, and I'm honored to have you as my friend. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been fantastic to talk, Kurt. It's been really awesome. And all of you guys, remember, go check out Kurt's things and follow him. All right. Well, that's it.
Take care, everybody.
That was a fantastic conversation. What an amazing conversation. I would have talked longer, but I had to go. Actually, that's literally what happened. I had to go. My family was waiting for me to go to lunch. And they were very patient because normally my interviews only take about 45 minutes, but it took double that time. So you guys can find... so first of all, a big thank you to Kurt for taking the time to stop by the Just Japan podcast for the first time, and hopefully not the last. It was great to catch up with him and to talk about his philosophies, his experiences, and what's next. It's really exciting, especially for all of you who know who he is. And if you don't know, you've found someone you should be subscribing to. And of course, that leads me to let you know that you can, of course, find all the links to Kurt down in the show notes at Just Japan. You can, under the podcast, you can also go to justjapanstuff.com. Just go look for Softypapa. He's all over the place. Look for Softypapa on X, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, you name it, he's there. And that's it. That's where we're at. And that was a great conversation. So if you're wondering why it's been such a long time between recordings, I'll just let you know. I've got a couple of other interviews too. But to be honest, right now, the current package I have with my podcast hosting provider only limits me to a certain number of megs upload space a month. And if I upload every week, I just can't do it because I don't have the bandwidth to do that or the space. I'm not currently in a financial position to increase my package and spend the money to get more space. I'm not in that situation. I won't be in that financial situation to be able to do that for quite some time, I think. Just the way it is, the way the cookie crumbles. So you're going to have to settle with 2 to 3 episodes a month for the next several months until I can maybe increase my package. So again, it's a financial thing, but that's how it is. I was using the free service over on Spotify for podcasters. It used to be called Anchor, but to be honest, it's garbage. I just don't like it. It's just not good. It's free, but you get what you pay for. Maybe it's a great place if you're starting a podcast, but it's not a place that I want to be with a podcast that I love so much like this. So I'm staying with Libsyn for now. Well, I think I've been with Libsyn the whole time. So, but yeah, so in case you're wondering, I am fine. I'm doing well. Some interesting things that have happened recently. I had a 2-week Easter/Ramadan break. Of course, I don't observe Ramadan. I'm not Muslim, but I do live in a Muslim country at the moment, in Malaysia. So it was nice to have a 2-week holiday. In the last month, my son and I, Kai, who is now 13, he's going to be 14 soon enough, believe it or not, we joined an arm wrestling club. That's right, guys. I'm now arm wrestling. Never thought I'd say that. But I joined a local arm wrestling club called the Penang Pullers, and I'm having a blast. Oh my God, it's so much fun. I wanted to join some kind of a local club where I could meet local folks, not just expats and be in that expat bubble, but connect with people in the community. And I wanted something that was kind of fitness focused and health focused, and something that would kind of inspire me and motivate me to continue my training, to exercise, to work out, to lift weights, and all that kind of stuff like that. So I joined this club, and I'm having such a fantastic time. Myself and my son are the first foreigners who've been in the club. A lot of fantastic, welcoming, great guys who are there, and they've been teaching us the ropes, learning the basics of arm wrestling. And I've been having a lot of fun. It's a pretty safe sport if you know how to do it and you're doing it properly and you're doing it with others who are respectful and know what they're doing too. And it's been a lot of fun doing the training when I go home. All the different new exercises for my forearms and to learn about my pronating and supinating and lifting and all this different kind of stuff and how to make my arms stronger and the rest of my body stronger. It's really neat. So we'll see where that goes in the future. Maybe, in time I might, enter some competitions or something. Who knows? But not anytime soon, because I am very much so a novice and I'm in a lot of pain all the time because of it. Just using muscles I never had, never knew I had, never used that way before, all that stuff. So, yeah, check out my social media, guys. If you don't already follow me on social media, you should be. I have been sharing. If you do, I've been doing this. I've been on the Facebook page. There's going to be a link below to that. That's I'm really active on the Facebook group, guys, or the Facebook page. That's facebook.com/justjapanstuff. And I post there several times a day. I do post a lot of stuff. Put a lot of video content there, too, that I just don't put in other places. So go check that out. What else? That's really it. So go check out all my socials. All the links are below. Go to justjapanstuff.com and you can check it all out there. Support the Patreon if you can. And I'm not really going to talk about that so much anymore. I think moving forward, we'll just keep hanging out and chatting. So that's it, guys, for episode 217 of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening wherever you are. I hope you, whatever service or platform you use, I hope you enjoyed this video version of the podcast. If you're watching this, more than a 90-minute video of me and Kurt, and maybe a big surprise to a lot of you. And I hope you really dig it. If you're watching this on the video and you like what you're seeing, I won't be putting up these videos very often. It's a lot of extra layers of work for me. But if you like what you hear, you can listen on Spotify and Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts and all those different places. Links are below if you want to go and subscribe to the podcast. I would really appreciate it. Because again, and it's like flogging a dead horse or informing live horses that basically there's still a lot of folks out there who don't know I restarted. There's even a lot of folks who just don't even know I post videos on YouTube, and I'm doing that pretty regularly now because they don't show up on their feed. But that is that. I won't whinge and whine anymore. All right, guys. Well, I'm good. I'm going to Thailand at the end of next week too. I'm going to Thailand for a conference, an education conference on Phuket Island, which will be interesting. My first time there in Phuket, and I have not been in Thailand since 2003. So I'll be just going there for the weekend, but looking forward to meeting some people that I know in the education sphere through my education social media circles. It's going to be really neat. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode of the podcast. I'm Kevin, and I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe, and I will be talking to you really soon.
If you got a minute to spare, don't go anywhere, stay right there, 'cause Kevin is about to speak. Stay in peace on the street.